Hey everyone, welcome to the People and Perks podcast. Each week, we're going to sit down with an employee benefits vendor and give you insights into the best benefits on the market so you can make better decisions for your people. I'm Sean, founder of Perkwise, the UK's first employee benefits discovery and review platform.
And I'm Adam. I'm a consultant here at Wingate Benefit Solutions. And today we're going to be talking about why traditional EAPs are failing your employees. We're very pleased to be joined by Jamie. He's the founder of ReechUs to help us explore this. Jamie, great to have you on. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to found ReechUs. If I can get my words out.
Yeah, thank you, Adam, and thanks, Sean, for having me on. I really like the title here. Failing is such a strong word, and I'm hopefully going to back up why I believe that to be true. My name's Jamie. I'm the co-founder and CEO of ReechUs. Very simply, ReechUs helps organizations connect employees to therapists, counselors, and other mental health professionals. I think one of the problems that I noted was that organizations seemingly have everything in place when it comes to mental health support. What's on paper looks good, but in practice, it doesn't necessarily work. I'm going to help make that case today. My background is very diverse, but ultimately, mental health has been something that I've really struggled with in my life. Had very severe depression when I was in my 20s, kind of came to a head in my late 20s, and I was prompted by a buddy to speak to a therapist, which I was extremely resistant to, as a lot of men are. I went through probably 9 months to a year of therapy working with this person, and it completely transformed my life. And since then, I've become a massive advocate for counseling and therapy, and I want to try and get as many people access to it as possible. And I think if everyone had some form of intervention in their life, there would be a lot less problems and companies would be thriving.
Yeah, so true. I think, talking about traditional EAPs I would say they're probably the most talked about benefit in my world. I think a lot of people know about an EAP in the benefits world, know about an EAP. If you work in HR, you know what it is. You've probably had it in every business you've ever worked in. But the reason they're talked about is not because they're the most used benefit, and they're definitely not the most valued benefit that people have. But like you've kind of highlighted there, they can have a huge, huge impact done the right way. I've got some stats that I looked at just before we jumped on. So just to bring this to life a little bit. So REBA report that 75% of the UK workforce have access to an EAP, but average take up is 3%, which I think is probably high in some cases. 27% of employees don't even know their EAP exists. The flip side of it is 79% of employees report moderate to high levels of stress, and 53% of employers say mental health is the main cause of sickness in their workforce. So there's this huge gap between people needing support and people accessing it. Why do you think that is? What's causing that rift?
There's a few things, and you're right. You've highlighted it perfectly. There is a huge problem with mental health. Huge, right? This isn't just exclusive to organizations and employees. It's global, right? And it's very, very bad in the Western world and England especially. And what we have in place as a system, the primary system, is the NHS. And as we know, the NHS is massively underfunded. It is struggling with staffing and lots of other things. We have 6 million people, I think, on a waiting list looking for medical, psychiatric help. That's number one, and it's failing, right? So number two, okay, what's number two? Number two is EAP, ultimately. It is the support that organizations provide their employees. So as a nation, we're almost leaning on this thing. And the question isn't really, is it sufficient? Is it designed to be used? Is it actually designed to be there, to be this second thing that we as a nation kind of rely on? And personally, I don't think it is. I think I can kind of expand a little bit on some of the stats you threw up, because those are stats that I use a lot. I agree. I don't actually think it is 3%. In many cases, it's less. I think that, what was the stat? That I think 27% of employees know it exists and the rest
Don't
don't.
know it exists. Yeah.
Don't know it exists. A third of the ones that do know it exists don't actually know what it does. There's lots of reasons for that. I think one of the problems is the stupid name, right? A terrible name. I still don't understand why we haven't changed the name. That kind of going on beyond that, when people actually do use it, a huge percentage of them get turned away. And one of the main reasons for that is that companies don't realize what's included in their EAP. So they communicate very badly what it can be used for. And then you have employees being turned away for certain things. And I've heard of many different reasons that employees have been turned away, and some are actually quite distressing. One of them, which I heard recently, and I heard it from somebody who had experienced it twice, was when they told the counselor or therapist they were speaking to via the EAP that they had autism, they were immediately told that they could not continue their intervention.
Wow.
Shocking, right? Absolutely shocking. A large percentage get passed to self-help resources instead of intervention. So already, even the ones that are using it aren't necessarily reaping the benefits of it. I can go even further, right? Let's say the people that are using it actually do get to speak to someone. Question then is, are they getting sufficient intervention? Are they getting enough help to overcome the issue that they are struggling with? And in many, many, many cases, the answer is also zero. It might be that they've been passed around from different counselors. It might be they have to wait. I think waiting times for EAPs in the UK, this might be outdated slightly, but I think it's probably reasonably accurate, is around 9 days. So if somebody is having a severe mental health issue and they call their EAP, and they need to speak to someone, they may have to wait 9 days before they can then actually speak to them. So the question then is that person able to work? If they are at work, are they working properly? So you can kind of start to unpack, why is this the system? Why is this what we have? And I personally believe that EAP started as this brilliant thing. Finally, organizations, let's say, 40 plus years ago, whatever it was, organizations finally starting to take the mental health of their employees seriously. So organizations kind of started popping up that provided some form of service, which was fantastic. The problem is that over the years, it's just been diluted. It's been a race to the bottom in terms of costs because organizations are not necessarily taking this seriously. They're expecting to pay anywhere between, £8 and £11 per employee per year. Sometimes they don't want to pay at all and they bolt it onto some insurance policy. And what's left is from, a situation where we've got these services, but they just aren't necessarily fit for purpose. And I think that's where we are right now. And I think that hopefully in a very long-winded way answers your question.
There's so much, I guess we could unpack there, but the impact of what you've just said around, if I've got I'm going through crisis and I want to speak to someone as a male in my mid-30s, the wife's constantly telling me that I need to talk to my mates more. She's got mates that she blabbers on the phone to non-stop. Whereas for men, especially, there is a little bit of stigma around asking for help. And I guess if you do reach out to someone, you pluck up that courage, you think, right, I am going to do it. I've got this EAP through work. I'm going to go and chat to someone about this issue that I'm facing. And then you either get told that you can't get support or you've got to wait over a week before you can talk to someone. Surely it's just going to amplify any issues that you might be facing.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Adam, when I went through therapy and intervention, I was lucky. I found someone that was local to me. I walked in. She asked me lots of different questions. I think one of the first questions she said was, "How bad is it?" And I said, "Well, I was in Lidl yesterday and I cried next to the bakery section," which, looking back, is quite funny, right?
You shouldn't
But
laugh,
I was in a bad way, right?
Yeah.
Just like, I'm
That's
quite
a
a
happy
masculine guy.
place,
I'm
that is.
over 6 foot. I'm a big dude, bald, right? Me crying next to like the croissants at Lidl is a weird thing to see, But this was kind of how bad things have got. I was in a terrible state. It took so much for my friend to push me into having it. I got lucky. I got to speak to the right person that I felt comfortable with. If I hadn't spoken to the right person, I'd gone through this situation of, okay, I'm going to call a hotline. They're going to pass me around a little bit. It's going to be quite difficult. I'm not necessarily going to feel too comfortable. I'm going to have to wait 9 days. I speak to someone I don't feel comfortable with. That's it. Game over. Not only am I not getting into the mental health space like I have done, I'm not getting any help. I'm stepping far away. And I think this is one of the big problems. You've highlighted something massive there. It's not just, okay, they're not getting the help at that moment. Are they being switched off intervention, mental health intervention forever?
It's almost as if it's become, like you mentioned before, so it was a good idea back in the day, but so much has evolved since then. And it's almost as if it's just become a tick box exercise for employers where they put it onto their employee benefits section on their website to try and attract talent and say like, yeah, we've got mental health support, we have EAP support. But then they've kind of forgotten about like, okay, you have the call, but then what happens after that? And like you said, there are so many people who are not getting the support they need. Coming from personal experience myself, so like I'm with you on like therapy. I've also done therapy, and I think it's amazing. I think, you know, if you can get access to good therapists, it can be really life-changing. And I actually had a pretty positive experience one day. I was feeling really overwhelmed. I was like close to burnout, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to call my EAP today. And I actually ended up having a pretty positive experience. It was just somebody on the other line, and it was just somebody to talk with. I spoke with him for half an hour. He, you know, asked me some questions, and I did feel a bit better after speaking with him. But you know, then that kind of stopped there, you know, and there's probably, you know, as somebody, I'm quite self-aware of, you know, when I need to speak to somebody, but there's probably so many employees out there who won't even take that step to having that first phone call, which is such a shame. But I think, you know, do you think it's down to the employer to kind of like, have that responsibility to not push people, but like, you know, show people that, you know, if you do go down this path, then it could actually potentially be good for you.
Absolutely, mate. I want to make it clear. I do not think that EAPs are worthless. I just feel like someone needs to highlight how problematic they can be. Because if we just accept this as the status quo, like you said, Adam, 75% of organizations have this thing, right? If you look at bigger organizations, I think it's up to like 85%, right? If we just accept, okay, this is what we've got, this is good enough, nothing changes. The problem just gets worse. And so I'm always very careful about saying, you know, there's people out there that have had amazing experiences, that have never reached out for help. They got to the right person at the right time. They didn't have to wait very long, and it was brilliant. Amazing. But we have a massive issue, huge mental health problem. And so I personally believe the whole outlook, whole perspective on this thing needs to shift dramatically. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do.
Well, that's a beautiful segue. So tell us, Jamie, like, what are you doing at ReechUs that's different? Like, what makes you stand out from, I guess, the traditional market, and how you engage employers, employees?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with kind of like the why, I guess, because from an altruistic perspective, this is not a selling point for employers. Employers have shareholders, they have KPIs, they have targets, they have job roles, right? They have boards, they have corporate things, you know? A lot of this stuff comes down to kind of the bottom line, and I understand that, and I empathize with it. So I think that we almost need to change the narrative a little bit when we're talking to employers, because from their understanding, it is a tick box exercise. It is, like Sean said, more of an insurance policy rather than a well-being system, to have something like this. I think that they really do. I think we really do need to kind of confront the impact of it. Like, what is the impact of having a very mentally unhealthy workforce? Massive amounts of absence. I think I did write it down somewhere because it was a stat that I forgot, but I'm pretty sure that it's something along the lines of 20% of absence is recorded as mental health related. And then if you really look into it, there was a study they did in the US. about big study in the US. And I think, it was 2/3 of Gen Z employees have exaggerated physical, bad physical health, headache, bad leg, whatever, right? Because they needed a mental health day. And half of millennials had done the same. So whatever stats we have on absence and mental health are absolute rubbish. In reality, it's a far worse issue. Okay. So from an employer perspective, if it's not just about, okay, well, we want to look after our people. Some organizations are like that. Most aren't. And I understand why. Then I think we kind of need to look at the cost implications of it. Massive amount of absence. Look at performance. Can someone really perform if they're having a crisis and they have to wait 9 days? Probably not. Are you going to be able to recruit if you don't clearly show that you're supporting your people? It's going to be harder. Are you going to be able to retain your best staff? All these things kind of come up. So I think from that perspective, those are the messages that I'm trying to get across. What are we doing differently to make sure that our mental health support system actually works? And I think I can kind of split it down to 3 things. The first is trust. I think that most employees that I've spoken to about their EAP that know it exists, one of the biggest issues they have is this service independent of my employer? If I tell them that I'm stressed, if I tell them that I am depressed, is that going to get back to my line manager? Is that going to affect my future prospects in terms of promotion or job roles or whatever, right? Trust is a massive thing. I mean, the other thing is like you were talking about, Adam, when as a man, trusting that service is going to be anonymous and that you feel comfortable is a huge thing. And phoning a telephone line where the first thing that you get is someone who is designed to triage you onto something else is just not the way to go. And so trust is the big thing. And so whenever we work with an organization, the first thing I do is I have I do it personally. I do a live launch with the team, and I say I have a declaration, and I say, listen, your employer will know nothing about what you do. They won't know what you say. They won't know that you've used it. They'll know nothing. We won't report it to them. And just from that, and immediately we get far better utilization. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is speed, because 9 days is not quick enough. If you are having a real problem, the longer that you wait, the worse it becomes. The more it starts to impact your social life, your relationships, your work life. It might be that you can't perform in your job. It might be you start snapping at people. It might be that your mood sucks. Start to see the breakdown in the dynamics of the team just because these things are not resolved quickly, right? We've all had it. You know, you have I don't know, let's say you have a really stressful period, or you have a very, very bad conversation, argument with someone, let's say. If that thing isn't resolved quickly, it manifests and it makes it far worse. So speed is essential. 9 days is too long. Realistically, with us, we look at 24 hours if we can, 48 hours if not. Make sure someone is booked within minutes of them needing help. So I think those two are the big things. I think the third is relevance, right? There are so many different therapists that come from different backgrounds, that have different perspectives. 2 therapists that, let's say, focus on CBT can be totally different. And one can be very, very qualified, one less so, but it's all irrelevant if they don't connect with the person. So relevance is a massive thing. And being just given a professional to talk to, I don't necessarily think is the best way to go. I think better to present a selection of intervention that someone could have, that, you know, a group of different specialists that cover different things, different areas, that have different backgrounds and are from different parts of the world and all the rest of it. I think that for me is one of the things I'm most proud about our service. So an employee knows that, okay, I trust this service, I can speak to someone quickly, and I know the person I'm speaking to is relevant to me.
One thing you said, actually, I think it might have been before we started recording, was focus on outcomes and not utilization. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah. So I think when I entered this space, the one thing that I learned pretty quickly was that utilization is what employees care about, right? What they really hate when it comes to benefits is signing up to something, whatever it is, and people don't use it. I think the problem is, though, when we focus on utilization, is that we don't actually know what qualifies as utilization. There was one wellbeing provider who I became quite pally with. I won't name them, but they used to boast 91% utilization. And I sat down with them one day and I asked them lots of questions. And it turns out that 91% is how many of them downloaded the app, right? Now that's fine. Okay. But it landed on me in that moment that actually utilization is not the stat that matters. It doesn't necessarily move the needle at all. The thing that matters was the thing used and was it helpful? Did it actually have an impact? Did it move the needle for the organization? Did absence drop? Were people turning up with less presenteeism? Was staff turnover reducing? Or were people just feeling better? Like these things matter. So I think for us, the biggest shift in 2026 is going to be our messaging from utilization to outcomes. Because as an employer, I would rather have a service that is used by 10% of the organization and makes a difference than is used by 100% of the organization and makes no difference.
Sean, you're on mute, I think, still. I can see you coming in.
Classic. Sorry. Do you think that because of the nature of an EAP, people really see it as like just a last resort rather than something that can be used proactively to support with their mental health? They just see it as like, kind of like a last line before, everything turns upside down for them. This is like they only really view something as an EAP when it's like, it's already, in some instances, like they've already it's really struggling.
Yes. And I think the reason for that is the way it is designed. If you think BAPs are phone numbers, right? Ultimately, if you think about the other instances that you would use a phone number when you're struggling, they tend to be crisis lines, right? Things like the Samaritans, things where things are really bad. I don't think that I would use a phone line in 2026 if I was just feeling a bit stressed or a little bit overwhelmed, or I felt like things were starting to unravel a little bit. I would not think phone line. I would think I need to get in front of somebody. And so 100%, mate, 100%, I think that by design, there is that outcome, that problem, for sure.
And in what you're doing and like through your conversations with employers, do you feel that you're trying to change that message to make it something that could be a bit more proactive? Or what are you hearing in your conversations with employers who are interested in a product like ReechUs compared to what they've previously been using?
Yeah, great question. So I ran a wellbeing budget benchmark piece of research that we still haven't got around to publishing, but it was basically looking at, okay, how does wellbeing budget, how do they break down, and what do people spend their money on? And not necessarily what are the official outcomes, but roughly like what's take up and those kind of things. By far, the thing that is invested in the heaviest is reactive based services. And I would base EAP in its current form as a reactive service. Problems happen, bad problem. HR goes, okay, it gets to the point where they speak to HR. HR goes, okay, here's the phone line for EAP. Within that survey, we also asked organizations, what if you had £10,000 tomorrow, what area would you spend it on? Would you spend it on reactive initiatives, proactive initiatives, physical health and financial health based initiatives, or something else? I'll direct you guys over to that piece of research. Overwhelmingly, what HR managers were looking for were proactive solutions. So they want something, right, that gets to the employee before things turn to kind of crisis mode. They do want that. It's just them trying to figure out what that looks like. And for me, it more or less is the same. as their reactive solution. It's just packaged differently and it's presented differently. It's presented in a way that makes it accessible immediately so that it doesn't need to become a reactive measure.
Yeah, that's so true. And I guess like on that vein of thought, so if you're talking to a HR leader, so I'll give you an example. I was talking to a HR leader yesterday who security business, 200 people, quite male dominated. They've got no benefits whatsoever. But they've grown to a size now where they think, actually, we should provide some support to our employees.
Can you give me their number?
But interestingly, the HR leader said, oh, well, I think we'll just get an EAP to start with. I think, number one, is that the right approach? Like, do you think an EAP is still the first port of call when it comes to supporting staff? And what advice would you give them when looking for, if they were going to look at an EAP, for example, what advice would you give them in terms of what they should be looking out for?
I think that they've done what every organization has done. Like you said, 75%, big organization is 85%. They all have it. So the first thing they go is, oh, we should probably have that. And I think the goal here is to challenge that thinking and say, what is it for? Because if your answer is, we need something so that we can signpost if things get legally sticky, that we have something in place, then fine, great. That's a great solution. It just needs to be something that you've got on the books. You can use it to prop open the door, whatever. If that's what it's for, then fine. If you genuinely want something that is going to have a massive impact, not just personally to the employees, looking at their health and their well-being, but also that is going to make a tangible effect to the bottom line, I think you need to think a little bit more critically about what should be there. Personally, I think that if you're looking at, you have no benefits whatsoever, I think the first thing you should be looking at is some form of mental health support, something. So I think in some way they've done the right thing.
Yeah.
I think that organizations really need to start questioning, though, what the outcome of that mental health support should be.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess like the other thing that we see with EAPs is what tends to happen is someone might decide they need an EAP, they'll buy an EAP for the right or wrong reasons. They'll have a long contract in place, and then you'll get initial interest in it, but then utilization drops to this low level. What support do you guys give employers to ensure that they are getting most bang for buck? Like, how do you communicate with employees? Like, is it still the case that the best way to communicate EAPs is that poster on the back of the bathroom door? Because that was the way it was done when they first launched.
It's not a bad way,
No, it's so how do you support organizations with that kind of ongoing engagement?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think so. So one thing I think I'll make very clear is that with the EAP companies, I know the big ones especially, low engagement is built into the business model. If there was high engagement, they would not make money. It does not make financial sense, right? It's built into the way it's delivered. It's built into their stupid name. It's built into the contracts that will penalize organizations for higher utilization if that happens. It is low by design, right? So even if we just presented our solution as is, we would already get higher utilization because low utilization is not baked into anything. What we also do is we make sure that the employees know about us and they know how to access it. And we run a campaign throughout the year to make sure that happens. There's lots of different ways that we do it. I think that the one thing that really, really helps is them getting some form of communication with it, whatever form makes sense for the organization, regularly, or at least semi-regularly, once every week, once every 2 weeks, that just reminds them that it's there and this is how to access it. That's the main thing. The other thing that we do is we always make sure that the manager, the point person in the organization, the person that we communicate with, knows how to communicate it well, and knows when to communicate it. right? So I have an amazing HR manager that I currently work with. She said that she knows all of the therapists and counselors on our network. And she knows them because when an employee says that, oh, I'm having this specific issue, not only can she go, why don't you check out the ReechUs platform? She can say, have you spoken to Jimmy? Or why don't you look at Yoli, who specializes in neurodiverse people struggling with neurodiversity on this specific issue, which is just amazing, right? And so from people like her, we've kind of expanded from just, okay, let's make sure the employees know about it, to, okay, what are the things that the HR manager or senior leadership or whatever can do to make sure that it's utilized. I'd say the other two things that we do a live launch at the beginning. I do it because I want to communicate directly to those people. This is what you now have access to, and this is how it works. And I want you to use it, and it is safe for you to talk to somebody. But also, I normally do a live launch with the mental health first aider team as well. So the mental health first aider is, in my opinion, an amazing initiative where some people in the organizations take it upon themselves to identify certain traits that might be the result of mental distress. Right? It's brilliant. Unfortunately, in many organizations, it's not really delivered too well. It can be that they just get the certification, but then they don't practice what they preach, or they're not encouraged to actually utilize those skills that they develop. So I like to get that team together, and at the very least, that team then has a tool that they can use. So if they notice something, they can pull someone aside and say, listen, you have access to this thing. So what I'd say, one, we don't cake low utilization into the model. I would rather have a modest goal with the organization and said, okay, you've had 1% engagement. Let's focus on 5 for the first 6 months. Then maybe we'll look at upping it later on. And I'll kind of talk about the cost implications of that later. Let's focus on that outcome and let's make sure that happens, and let's do it together.
Thanks, Jamie. You mentioned a lot there around like how important like communication is, and just like making sure that the employees know that what's available to them, and kind of like you have that kickoff program. I'm quite curious for like post launch. I read you did a pilot program with a company that had a 10.5% improvement in mental health scores. How do you, once the program is implemented, how do you then get the data that feeds back, for the employers and HR to really see that your programs are working?
Yeah, so we look at two different things. One, we look at the impact of the organization. So those are KPI metrics generally that they really care about, right? So things like absence and things like staff attrition, and those really corporate-y type words that actually do make a difference when it comes to renewal, when you're looking at CFO, MD, those kind of people in the senior leadership team. We also run a wellbeing survey alongside that is more frequent, and what we're doing there is we're looking at a significant proportion of the organization and seeing if certain wellbeing scores move. And those scores can be related to depression, stress, anxiety, because our program goes beyond just mental health, and we cover things like physical health. We have a personal training program, remote personal training program. We cover financial coaching. We have some specialist areas that we cover, things like menopause and other bits and pieces. We do also look at some more specific metrics. I'm always looking to improve that. And so we are this year, I'm committed to making it more integrated into the service rather than sort of a separate snapshot of the organization. We will probably still do that, but I also want to very, very live see these improvements from people that are currently engaging. And so, yeah, I'm happy with where we're at considering, but I want to go far deeper.
So sounds like you have some really exciting things on the horizon for 2026 and beyond. How do you see like this space of like evolving over the next 2, 3, 5 years? I know there's everybody's talking about AI these days and things like that. So like where do you see this not just the EAP as itself, but just kind of employee well-being moving the next few years?
So it's such a good question, and I don't have a good answer. I mean, I will give an example. I use ChatGPT heavily now. I don't just use it in my professional life. I use it in my personal life a lot. And I think one of the things that ChatGPT is really good at is providing answers, and kind of quelling initial distress, I guess. You're experiencing something, and because before AI existed, all we had was kind of Google that gave us sort of a rough idea of maybe what was going on. To have ChatGPT, which almost feels human in a way, kind of make you go, do you know what? This is normal. What you're experiencing, it's something that most people experience. In fact, blah, 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 blah. I think as a tool in its current state is fantastic. Um, and then the question is, okay, well, how do you continue with that? How do you make it even better? And so I did an experiment where I asked it to act like a therapist with me. And I sat with it for a couple of days. I maybe did an hour or two on concurrent days to just see, how I felt afterwards. And I discussed some things. And it became very, very clear that there was a gap. There was some nuance that it was missing. And I think it was missing it because it was not human. And it made it very clear that it is currently a language model. Now that's where ChatGPT is and other AI platforms are now. If anyone uses AI a lot, they know how quickly this thing is advancing. They can feel it just by the responses they get for, I don't know if they're generating pictures or they're asking it to create content or whatever. So where it could be in a couple of years, I don't know. Will it replace therapists? I think it will replace a portion of intervention, probably the initial. So I think that a lot of people can be helped by AI type intervention, and it will stop things progressing even further. That said, I still don't think it will replace counseling, therapy from a human person. I just think it will help. That's my opinion of it anyway, when it comes to kind of AI. Outside of that, I think that organizations have become much more savvy. I mean, you guys are in this space, so you tell me, do you think that organizations are becoming more savvy about just having something as opposed to something actually doing something, there being an outcome?
100%. I think a lot of organizations now, and like we said at the start, EAPs are talked about for the right and wrong reasons a lot. I think a lot more organizations are now much more aware of everything they offer to staff, and they want to see the impact it's having. It's not just a case of having something on the shelf that, oh, someone's struggling, just tell them about the phone number they can call. They want stuff that has impact because, businesses have been through quite a tricky time of late, changes to NI, tax, all of that sort of stuff, which means that cost pressures creep into benefit spend. And they need to be showing that actually the stuff they're giving staff is having an impact to staff well-being, but then also business bottom line. And there will be still outliers that, are just ticking boxes to make sure they've got some stuff because, they might not have the proper time to look into it. But I would say that, you're talking to employers now and they want to know if they're investing in something, like what is the outcome of this going to be and how is it going to impact us as a business? So you're bang on there. And I think going back to your point around, AI and shaping therapy and stuff like that, it is a little bit concerning at some stages because, we touched on the race to the bottom in terms of cost for some providers. And it's kind of that case of, do they strip out human interaction for the sake of saving money and, offering AI delivered services? And therefore, is the impact of those services actually going to do the right thing to even more a degree of what we're already seeing? I would probably argue not. I don't think you can eliminate human interaction, especially when it comes to this type kind of service. So it's a great point.
And I think we could go further with that. I think that the remote working world right now, one of the biggest problems we have is isolation and loneliness. And I think that AI is going to make that worse. And so I do think there will be a shift. And I think one of the shifts that will happen is community and human interaction for its own sake, right? So one of the things that I'm really keen to develop is some form of well-being based community that focuses on different areas, right? So that could be a menopause community, menopause meetup type thing. It could be something based around autism or ADHD or other neurodiversity. And the sole goal really is just to get people who share something in common, share something that maybe they're struggling with or they find hard, and just get them to interact and reaping the benefits of that. And I mean, it is important now, but I think that is something that I'd like to see implemented more in the well-being space. At least that's something that I'll be looking at quite heavily.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Give us a shout when you set it up.
Yeah, of course.
So I guess we'll wrap up now. But Jamie, I guess if there's one thing you want a HR leader who might be watching this to take away, what would you say that is?
Oh, one thing. Jamie at ReechUs.com. No, that's not it. No. I think honestly, the thing that to this day that really makes my heart sing is when I have an HR manager call me and speak to me and ultimately talk about outcomes. They don't necessarily start the conversation with price. They don't start the conversation with utilization. They talk about outcomes straight away. And I think whenever you are implementing a new benefit or considering a new benefit, please start there. Start with what is this supposed to achieve? Doing a well-being survey and asking employees what they want is not necessarily the way to go. You have to anticipate a little bit of what they need instead of what they want, because we all want shiny things, right? If somebody said to me, okay, Jamie, you work for this company, what do you want? You can have £100 bonus at the end of the year you can spend on massages, or you can have mental health support. I know what, I'm going for the bonus every single time. You kidding? I go for the fun thing, right? Really think about the outcomes, anticipate the needs, and be bold. Like, be willing to go to senior leadership and say, look, we want this to actually do something. That should be the focus, and might mean that we have to invest a little bit more.
I love that. Such an important mind shift as well from what's traditionally been happening in the industry. And I think, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. And I think if more people can, get access to companies like ReechUs, and more HR professionals and business owners, are all on the same page. And I think you're really going to make an impact and reach hopefully millions of employees where they spend most of their time, which is at their work. So I think it's a really really important mission that you're on. And really it's been a really great conversation.
Cheers, guys. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Really appreciate your time. And I guess for everyone watching, if you're looking to find out a little bit more about ReechUs, feel free to reach out to Jamie. Head over to Perkwise. If you need any advice on the benefits that you've got, feel free to reach out to us here at Wingate. But thank you for listening. Coming to a bathroom door near you, hopefully. But until next time, thank you.
Thank you.